In this video, we're going to discuss a specific aspect of verb agreements, which is tense agreement. I'm Kat Severson, the inventor of the Severson method, a scientifically proven way to learn anything fast, including the tense agreement of the verbs. It's not a secret that I derive my lessons from my colleagues, the Black Book, the College Panda, and the SAT Grammar from Erica Meltzer. And I think that Erica Meltzer, out of the three of them, really nailed this topic, so I highly encourage you to purchase this book. And in my edition, this is on page 157, where she talks about verbs, agreement, and tense. And feel free to watch our video where we talk about subject-verb agreement, but that's not the only aspect of the verb agreement that the SAT and the ACT will both be testing you on. When we're talking about tense agreement, we need to keep in mind that context is king. Well, let me show you an example. This is an example from the SAT. Pause the video, read it. What's interesting is that in isolation, actually all of the answer choices would work. Because what's your subject? Johnson. And then Johnson used, Johnson will use, Johnson had used, and Johnson uses. All four answer choices could work in isolation. You have to take the context into consideration. And judging by the context, you're going to see, even in this sentence, that this is just a pure narrative about something that happened in the past. Therefore, we have to be using participle to or past simple. Then the answer is A. The rule of thumb is that all of the forms of the verb are going to be parallel to the context. If you have ing in the context, the ing is going to appear in the answer choices. If you have present perfect in the context, present perfect is going to appear in that sentence, unless there is a need for the tense change in the sentence. I really don't want to turn this video into a boring grammar lesson. Just keep in mind that the behavior of the verb is going to mimic the context that is surrounding the sentence, unless there's a real need for this tense to change. Let me show you an example. Pause the video, try to solve this sentence by yourself. If you said D, you're absolutely correct. If you said will reach or had reached or were reaching, then I need you to really study that chapter in Erica Meltzer's book, because in this sentence, the author is talking about a hypothetical action, something that hasn't happened. And when it comes to hypothetical actions, we usually describe them with a form of a future in the past. Would reach. It's not something that has already happened, so therefore it's would reach. And that's one of the examples where the verb isn't parallel with the rest of the sentence because there's a clear need for the tense change. One more example for you guys. Try to pause it. Jamaica is your subject. Was in the process of forming a government is your verb. Then in here, between the commas, is an additional phrase. And then your answer choices are which would have achieved independence from Great Britain less than 3 years earlier. All of these answer choices are correct, but the only one is in agreement with the context. Notice, Jamaica was. So this is in the past tense, which basically cancels out B, which achieves, because that is in the present tense. C, which will have achieved. That would be in a future perfect, which also implies a present tense. And then now we're choosing between A and D, which would have achieved, and D is having achieved. And between the two, we need to choose the one that is less wordy. Therefore, the answer choice is D. And here's a little trick for you guys that I devised for my students to help them identify where there's a need for present perfect. Here are clear markers on the SAT that will tip you off to think, oh, that's the present perfect. And here's a really silly trick. It's FODS, FODS. For, over, during, since. Whenever you see these words around the verb in question, think that the SAT is hinting to you that they need present perfect. So here's an example that requires you to use present perfect. What is your subject? Uses. And uses is a plural subject. Uses, they. They become. Well, the problem is that that only cancels out A and B because A and B are both in the singular form. But what about have become or will have become? Uses for remote sensing more plentiful as technology has progressed, as NASA scientist Helen Stewart can attest. Has progressed right here is pointing to the fact that this is something that has already happened. Therefore, the answer choice is C and not D. One more example for you guys. Lloyd watched nervously until the climber, a daredevil named Bill Strother, made it to safety. Is this going to be a had watched or watched? Or has watched, maybe. Definitely not watches, because that would be in present tense. But they can all work if we just said Lloyd watches nervously until the climber made it to safety. They could all work, but if you consider the whole context, you will see that this is clearly a past tense narrative. And most of the time on the SAT it will be, but you always have to check whether they're also pointing to you for to the past perfect or the present perfect. Again, Erica Meltzer's book is a very clear description of this grammar. 24. Remember FODs? None of them was you. So whenever you see until, a lot of my students are tempted to use either past perfect or present perfect. Until is not a word that is going to tip you off to use present perfect. So it was not until 2017 that a study by demonstrated that the teacher's seating arrangement is the source of its excellent acoustics. So the answer choice here will be was not and not is not. One last example for you guys. This is actually from the recent SAT. These groups are instead recommending cotton denim insulation, which is made from industrial scraps, which was made from industrial scraps, which were made. Well, let's begin the subject-verb agreement process first. What is your subject? What is made from industrial scraps? Denim. Denim is a singular noun. How do you know? Try to replace it with a pronoun. It. It is made or was made. Well, if you look around for the context, you're going to see these groups are instead recommending. Are recommending points to the fact that it's present tense. So therefore, in order to agree with the context, because context is king for these types of questions, we're going to go for A, no change, which is made from industrial scraps. Just to sum it all up, in order to identify your verb tense agreement, you're going to be paying attention to the context and also know that it is okay to sometimes change the tense within the sentence if the sentence requires it. And don't forget, every month we pick one lucky person to get on a free coaching session, tutoring session with me, and you can enter to be a winner by leaving a comment. Every month we choose somebody and we announce those winners on my Instagram, Super Method. I'll see you guys there. Bye.